Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. In today's edition, this is going to be a three-part series. We're going to cover the first 10 stages of last year's Tour de France. I want to cover stage 11 in crazy detail on the part 2. And then part 3, I want to cover the rest of last year's Tour de France all the way from stage 12 to the finish on the Champs of last year's Tour de France and explain why Tadej Pogačar lost last year's Tour de France and explain why Jonas Vingegaard, I believe, is the 4th best rider in the world and not the 1st best rider in the world. Now, you guys know my list, right? Tadej Pogačar is number 1. This year's Giro d'Italia winner, Primož Roglič, number 2. Remco Evenepoel, number 3, the current road world champion and last year's Vuelta winner. And then Jonas Vingegaard is number 4. You're like, Chris, you're so crazy. He's number 4. Now, if I could pick just for July, I'd put Jonas number 3 and move Remco to number 4. But Remco wins World Championships, wins classic one-day races, wins a Grand Tour for you. And if I'm a team like Pseudo Quickstep, I want a guy who wins all year long, and I'd be willing to give up the Tour for a guy that wins all year long versus Jonas Vingegaard, who I think could get beat by Tadej Pogačar at just about any moment throughout the season when Tadej Pogačar is on his best form. I don't think anyone can compete with Tadej Pogačar, with the exception of that second Slovenian, Primož Roglič. That guy is on good form, and when he's flying healthy and flying good, he's the one guy I believe that can go head-to-head with Tadej Pogačar, possibly beat him for time bonuses, can time trial with Tadej Pogačar, but maybe just a couple seconds off. But then when we get up into the mountains, it's give or take on which rider's going to be able to drop, if they can, one of the other 2 riders, 1st or 2nd, best 2 riders in the world. I can't make the call on that, but you got to make someone 2nd. So I'm sorry, Primož Roglič, but you're 2nd. 5th best rider in the world, got to be Wout van Aert. Can't win a Grand Tour that we know of yet anyways, but he can certainly highlight one 2022 Tour de France to some legendary exploits there of what Wout van Aert did in last year's Tour de France. Some helping out his teammate Jonas Vingegaard, and some to the detriment of Jonas Vingegaard throughout the first 10 days of last year's Tour de France. The big guy was on a mission to win stages and to win the green jersey in last year's Tour de France, which I believe if you're going 100%, if you're going 100% for the yellow, I believe that's a detriment to Jumbo-Visma if you're trying to go all in for the yellow jersey. We go back 2 years with Primož Roglič when he crashed out on stage 3 of the Tour de France. Wout van Aert's on one side of the road, Primož Roglič is on the other. We're coming into the very crucial section on that stage 3 where Primož Roglič could have used Wout van Aert on the front to keep him out of danger. Instead, Wout van Aert's going for the stage. Primož Roglič is on the left. He crashes out. End of the Tour de France. No yellow jersey for Primož Roglič or for Jumbo-Visma 2 years ago at the Tour de France. But we fast forward, we go to just last year at the Tour de France, and we're going to talk about the first 10 days of the Tour de France. Then I'm going to lead you into stage 11, so we have some kind of understanding of what I'm talking about is happening on stage 11 when I get to that in part 2 on Beyond the Coverage. Now I'm going to try to wrap all the part 1, 2, and 3 up before Dauphiné starts. You go, Chris, it's a little bit early for the Tour de France. It's a little bit early, but once we get into the Dauphiné, get into the Tour de Suisse, then we only got a couple weeks before the Tour de France starts. I'm going to need a little bit of a break, and we're going to have to detail coverage most of the different teams that are starting the Tour de France. So I want to bring these 3 important coverage here on Beyond the Coverage to you guys early, give you plenty of time to think about it, so when we get at the Tour de France, you understand what I'm talking about tactically a little bit better. Now, like I said, a lot of people want Jonas Vingegaard. I see it in the comments all the time as number 1. Now we'll explain it. First stage 1 at the Tour de France last year, we're talking about a time trial, very short, about 13 kilometers long, almost a prologue. And we'll see there Tadej Pogačar puts time into Jonas Vingegaard of about 8 seconds. 1 more second on the other Slovenian, Primož Roglič. So Tadej Pogačar's already up going into stage 2. Stage 2 and stage 3 are sprinter stages. Now let me back the film up before last year's Tour de France started, and I'll give you a little more information because Matteo Trentin, UAE Team Emirates, he is one of the super domestiques for Tadej Pogačar that was supposed to start the Tour de France. His main role for Matteo Trentin was to get through these first 5 stages and stay near Tadej Pogačar and keep him out of trouble. Now, when we start getting into stages 2 and 3, these are stages where Matteo Trentin would have been big-time help. But UAE Team Emirates, Matteo Trentin, tested positive for COVID last year, so he was out and they brought in Mark Hirschi. Mark Hirschi, stand-up rider, top-notch, top of the game, no doubt about it, but he was COVID positive at the Tour of Swiss, so his form's down. That means UAE Team Emirates already started with 7 riders, 7.5 if you count Mark Hirschi, who's sick and coming on not with his best form. That means Mark Hirschi can't replace the effort that Matteo Trentin would have did on Stage 2 and Stage 3. Now Stage 2 won by Fabio Jakobsen from Soudal Quickstep, takes it in the sprint, and we see Wout van Aert's up there in second place. We get into Stage 3, same thing on Stage 2 and 3 for what Tadej Pogačar's tactics would have been. Stay out of trouble, get to the finish, do not get caught up in splits, try to stay out of the crosswind. Both these stages, when we're up in the north of Europe, and I'll talk about Denmark, were done pretty casually throughout the beginning of the stages. It wasn't a whole lot of stress in the first 2 road stages of the Tour de France last year, 2 and 3. So Tadej Pogačar's team could easily look after him, even though Matteo Trentin's not there. The problem is, though, for UAE team members, Tadej Pogačar, as you're finishing Stage 2, not losing time, going into Stage 3, it's going to be the stage that Dylan Groenewegen wins after Wout van Aert hooked Peter Sagan all the way to the curb, but didn't get disqualified or relegated on the stage for his tactics. So Dylan Groenewegen gets the stage win. Now Wout van Aert finishes just behind again and doesn't win a stage here. Remember, if we go back to the time trial on Stage 1, Wout van Aert was second on that day, so he's getting a little frustrated with being in the top 5 throughout the first 3 days of the Tour de France, but has yet to win a stage. He is, though, going to put himself in the race leader's yellow jersey as we get ready for Stage 4. Now, this is when it gets really technical and problems start coming into play for UAE team members, Tadej Pogačar, where having a full gas tank starts getting drained a little bit because Stage 2 and 3 near the finish, Tadej Pogačar is not going to have Matteo Trentin next to him to be able to look after him. Now we get into Stage 4. The main objective when you look at Stage 4 has to be the final climb, about 1 kilometer long, over 7%. Going to come into the finish of the stage at about 13 kilometers to go. They're going to hit 1K, they're going to go to the top, then 12K all the way into the finish. Now, the technical part of this side and the part where Matteo Trentin was really missed for UAE Team Emirates is going to really come into effect here on Stage 4, where Tadej Pogačar is going to have to use a lot more energy. We'll come into this final climb here, the 1K climb with 13 kilometers to go. Before you come into it, though, it's technical, comes down near the coast, and it's windy and twisty all the way in the climb. Jumbo-Visma win the battle coming in the climb, and they light things up. I mean, they got their whole team on the front. They're drilling it all over the place, and they're going to launch Wout van Aert solo over the top of this climb with Adam Yates from Team Ineos and with Jonas Vingegaard behind, chasing with a little bit of a gap. Wout van Aert's not going to wait for his teammate back there, or Adam Yates is going to go full gas all the way into the line. And then, of course, with his Red Bull sponsor, with wings, he's going to flap his arms all the way into the finish as he wins Stage 4 in the race leader's yellow jersey here at the Tour de France. Magnificent stage for Wout van Aert to win. Little detrimental when you're talking about to Jonas Vingegaard, because if the big guy, Wout van Aert, had backed off a little bit, possibly he goes back there. He's got Jonas Vingegaard. They work together all the way to the line, and they gain some time on Tadej Pogačar. Instead, we go back to that climb. Tadej Pogačar, UAE Team Emirates, he's out of position. When he comes in the bottom of that climb, this is where he really missed a rider like Matteo Trentin, because no one else on his roster has the power and the technical ability to do what Matteo Trentin could have done on this stage, which is to get Tadej Pogačar coming through that last final turn before the 1K climb starts at the front of the peloton. Instead, Tadej Pogačar, in this part I'm guessing, going to throw a little bit of my own experience in. I assume he got boxed in somewhere coming down the last descent before the climb started. Instead of taking a big risk and going around the corner and possibly crashing, Tadej Pogačar backed off the gas, started this last 1K climb here at the Tour de France, Stage 4, a little bit out of position, and it's going to cost the Slovenian a ton of work. Now, as Wout van Aert's going solo, all the way up the climb behind, I can assume that Tadej Pogačar is going full gas, going by riders left and right as he is throwing into the pedals, trying to salvage time on Jonas Vingegaard, who's got a gap up front with Adam Yates on his wheel. Tadej Pogačar does a magnificent job to bring back everybody up front, with the exception of Wout van Aert, who solos into the stage and wins the stage. Now, we're talking about finishing Stage 4. Wout van Aert's in the race leader's jersey for Jumbo-Visma, and Tadej Pogačar is still ahead of time on Jonas Vingegaard and Primož Roglič. That's a magnificent feat when you go into this final climb here on Stage 4 way back. I'm going to assume he's 25, 40 guys back from the Jumbo-Visma train at the front, but I don't have the video to prove it, so we'll just have to take my word for it and hope I'm right. Go into stage 5. This is the all-crucial cobblestone day for the Tour de France. Super important, but Jumbo-Visma have Wout van Aert in the race leader's yellow jersey, and you know the big guy's going to want to win on the cobblestone and go back-to-back stage victories here at Paris-Roubaix. There's problems, though, that's going to happen for Wout van Aert. Now, like I said, I don't like the tactic of racing for stage wins, racing for green jerseys, if your sole objective is to win the Tour de France with yellow with Primož Roglič or Jonas Vingegaard. Now, this is not the way they're playing it. We know that already because Wout van Aert's tried to win stage 1, tried to win stage 2, tried to win stage 3, did win stage 4, and now he wants to win stage 5 on the cobblestones. On the cobblestones is a tricky section. There's always going to be chaos throughout the cobblestones. You do not want to have your team split up. You want your team all together, and you want power at the front. Now, Jumbo-Visma have displayed a magnificent amount of power throughout last year's Tour de France, but at this moment, still on stage 5, we don't know exactly how phenomenal Wout van Aert is, even though, with a little bit of a giggle, I'm telling you, he won the day before on stage 4, so we know he's good, but are we really going to know how good he is when we're talking about getting in the mountains? That's what I mean. So we go into the cobblestone day. Wout van Aert's hanging out too far back in the peloton. He's a little bit unconcerned with staying at the front all the time. And he stays in the back, he'll go down and crash. Once he crashes, that loses a ton of power for Jonas Vingegaard and Primož Roglič on this cobblestone day. We'll see the other Slovenian, Tadej Pogačar, always at the front, starting the Tour de France in the front of the peloton on stage 5 through all the cobblestone sections, always in perfect position. Up front, we had a large breakaway that was gaining time and could possibly take the race leader's yellow jersey because they had Nielsen Palas, the American rider from EF Education, in there. Now, that group will go all the way to the finish, and it'll be Simon Clark that wins the stage. Nielsen Palas will come up just a little bit short on the race leader's Tour de France yellow jersey because his teammate back there, Alberto Bettiol, was trying to make deals with Tadej Pogačar, which was increasing the pace of the peloton back there, and it left Nielsen Palas out of the race leader's yellow jersey at the end of stage 5. But let's go back and dissect just Tadej Pogačar, Jonas Vingegaard, and Primož Roglič. I told you Wout van Aert's crashed, and now he's a little hesitant and a little scared throughout the stage. His words, not mine, that he's staying in the back. We see some problems, of course, with the bike change from Jonas Vingegaard. He doesn't have the big guy, Wout van Aert, to look after him at that moment. Wout van Aert will come into the picture, but there'll be a little bit of a time gap before Wout van Aert comes up, realizes it's Jonas Vingegaard, and they'll wait back there and start chasing. Up front, there was a crash. We went through the roundabout. Primož Roglič went down in the crash, dislocated his shoulder, and now that Slovenian's off on the side of the road, which leaves Tadej Pogačar up the road driving it. The Slovenian is up there on every cobblestone section in the front of the professional peloton here at the Tour de France, driving it 100% as hard as he can. Now, do I like this tactic? I love this tactic from Tadej Pogačar, but is it using energy? Of course it is. Do you have to do it? Absolutely. At this moment in time, when I'm looking at stage 5, watching it live with NBC doing coverage, I'm sitting in the studios there and I'm thinking, Tadej Pogačar, you throw every ounce of energy you possibly have and try to win this Tour de France right here on stage 5 of the cobblestones. Well, the big guy Wout van Aert found some courage, came back, picked up Jonas Vingegaard, and drilled it into the line to save Jonas Vingegaard's chances at the Tour de France, keeping the gap to Tadej Pogačar's group at about 13 seconds. That's not a lot of time gained for the kind of power that Tadej Pogačar had to employ, but who knew that Wout van Aert, the superhuman man back there, could do the kind of power that he put out on the cobblestones to protect not only his race leader's yellow jersey, but keep Jonas Vingegaard in perfect general classification, only giving up 13 seconds to Tadej Pogačar. Primož Roglič, after this stage 5, his hopes for the Tour de France are pretty much nilled as he lost minutes on the cobblestones. But we go into stage 6. Wout van Aert is wearing the race leader's yellow jersey. He does one of the most ridiculous knucklehead tactics I've ever seen employed in my entire life when I'm talking about bike racing at the top level of the sport. Wout van Aert goes up the road with the American kid Quinn Simmons, and he has a third rider there with Jakob Fuglsang. Fuglsang decides early right away that this is a ridiculous move and I want no part of it. He talks to Wout van Aert, drops out of that group of 3 to make a group of 2 up there. Now, Wout van Aert, while wearing the race leader's jersey. This is different when we've seen other scenarios where you might have remembered a stage from Greg Van Avermaet in years past where he's in the race leader's jersey and he went in the early break on the mountain stage because he knew the only way to keep the jersey was to go in the early break. Nobody cares about Greg Van Avermaet going in the early break. It's all about the details, but they do care in last year's Tour de France with Wout van Aert going up the road. Nobody's going to let this happen, and we know because there's 4 teams back there chasing 2 riders. And one rider, Quinn Simmons, the young American kid, this is his first Tour de France. So what kind of experience and power could you expect out of the American? Well, he does more than I would have expected, but eventually pops and comes off with about 30 kilometers to go. And Wout van Aert's still fighting to hold off 4 teams back there chasing. Absolutely knucklehead move. Wout van Aert gets caught. Of course, once the climbing starts to the finish, he blows, loses the race leader's yellow jersey. But more importantly, what to focus on, with no Wout van Aert there at the finish, Tadej Pogačar is open to go ahead and win the stage win. Well, Tadej Pogačar gained 13 seconds on stage 5, and now at the end of stage 6, after the ridiculous Jumbo-Visma tactics, Tadej Pogačar makes him pay. He wins stage 6 and takes a 10-second time bonus over Jonas Vingegaard. Now we're going into stage 7, Planche de Belfi. Okay? Keep in mind when we're talking about stage 4, 5, and 6, that's a lot of energy from Tadej Pogačar, especially when we're talking stage 4 and stage 5. That's a ton of energy. Stage 6, not so much from Tadej Pogačar. UAE team did a solid job and just basically had to sprint at the finish to gain that 10 seconds. Now we're going into stage 7, though, Planche de Belfi, and the first mountain climb here at the 2022 Tour de France. As we start Planche de Belfi, UAE team members will drill it into the climb, and Rafał Majka will take the Slovenian, his teammate Tadej Pogačar, all the way into the gravel road that'll finish up Planche de Belfi. Tadej Pogačar will ride the front and spend a ton of chips right here. Then he'll get attacked by Jumbo-Visma's Jonas Vingegaard near the finish. Jumbo-Visma's Jonas Vingegaard jumped a little too soon, though. Tadej Pogačar digs deep, brings back Jonas Vingegaard, and then wins stage 7 to gain a 4-second time bonus over Jonas Vingegaard on Planche de Belfi. Now the time bonuses are starting to add up. Yesterday's catastrophic mistake on stage 6 to give Tadej Pogačar a 10-second time bonus, and now Jonas Vingegaard's mistake of going too early on Planche de Belfi cost him another 4 seconds. The time penalties are starting to add up to Jumbo-Visma. But let's see what happens as we start getting into stage 8. Now stage 8, there's another break going up the road, and Jumbo-Visma will ride the front throughout most of stage 8, even though Tadej Pogačar, UAE team Emirates, are wearing the race leader's yellow jersey. They bring the break back. Wout van Aert wins the stage, but guess what? Tadej Pogačar is right there gaining more time bonuses again as he gains 4 seconds with his 3rd place finish on stage 8. Now, this is starting to get really damaging here to Jonas Vingegaard's chances of winning the Tour de France, when now we're looking at Jonas Vingegaard being behind 39 seconds to the Slovenian Tadej Pogačar. We'll go through stage 9 with Bob Jungels winning, and then we'll go through stage 10 with Magnus Cort Nielsen winning on stage 10, and Jonas Vingegaard, Tadej Pogačar finishing on same time. So this will bring us into stage 11, which I'll cover tomorrow for you guys, because stage 11 is one of the most spectacular, legendary Tour de France stages that you can have. If you don't like stage 11, then there's no reason for you to enjoy bike racing, and you probably should not be watching Beyond the Coverage or the Butterfly Effect, so go ahead and unsubscribe. But if you did like stage 11, you better hit the subscribe button, likes button, leave a comment, and we'll get into stage 11 tomorrow on Beyond the Coverage. So make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys real soon.